The folder sits on my desk like a coiled snake. I've been staring at it for 30 seconds, maybe a minute, my coffee cup suspended halfway to my lips, gone cold in my hand. Through the glass walls of my corner office, I can see my team moving through the open floor plan. Jen at the whiteboard mapping Q4 projections, Marcus on a call with Singapore, the Monday morning hum of a division I built from chaos into something that actually works. My nameplate faces outward, brushed steel on frosted glass. Maya Chen, Vice President of Operations. But right now, none of that feels real. The HR folder is standard. Candidate briefing for a 2 p.m. interview, project manager role, backfill for Jenkins who retired last month. I've done a dozen of these this quarter alone. I don't usually review them personally, but we've had issues with this position. 2 bad hires in 18 months, so I told recruitment I'd sit in on finals. The name didn't register at first. Richard Kovacs, common enough. I skimmed the resume, 23 years in operations and supply chain, bachelor's from a state school, a string of mid-level roles at companies I vaguely recognize. Employment gap from 2019 to 2020, another from last August to present. He's 57. He's applying for a job that reports to my director of logistics, a woman half his age who I promoted last year. I almost set it aside. Then I saw the photo. It's a corporate headshot, the kind you get at one of those mall studios. Stiff pose, American flag blue backdrop, forced smile that doesn't reach the eyes. He's heavier than I remember. His hairline has receded into a horseshoe, and the lines around his mouth have deepened into permanent grooves of disappointment. But the eyes are the same. Pale blue, flat, the kind of eyes that look at you and find you wanting. My stepfather. I set the coffee down carefully because my hand has started to shake. Not fear. Not anymore. Something else. Something that tastes like metal and feels like standing on the edge of a very high place. I haven't seen Richard Kovacs in 16 years. Haven't spoken to him in 14. He was Richard back then, not Mr. Kovacs, though he was never Dad. Never anything warm. Just Richard, my mother's second husband, the man who walked into our lives when I was 8 and spent the next decade making sure I knew I didn't measure up. The intercom on my desk chirps. Ms. Chen. My assistant, Trevor, sounds apologetic. Just confirming your 2 o'clock is here in the lobby. Should I have HR bring him up, or do you want to reschedule? I look at the photo again. Richard in a cheap suit, trying to smile for a camera, applying for a job in the company where my name is on the door. Give me 5 minutes, I say. My voice comes out steady. Then send them up. I close the blinds. Breathe, Maya, think. I open my laptop and pull the full application file. He's local now, an address in Riverside about 40 minutes east, the kind of sprawling suburb where the houses all look the same, and the HOA fines you for the wrong color mailbox. His last role was regional manager at a mid-tier logistics firm, laid off 8 months ago when they consolidated divisions. Before that, he spent 6 years at a place that went bankrupt. Before that, a 3-year stint that ended for unspecified reasons. He's been out of work since June. It's February. The position he's applying for pays $78K. I can see the salary history he submitted. He was making $91K when he was let go, and that was after 2 years without a raise. This role would be a step down in title, in pay, in just about every metric that men like Richard use to measure their worth. I sit back in my chair, leather, ergonomic, the kind I once thought only people in movies had, and something almost like laughter bubbles up in my chest. He doesn't know I work here. How could he? I changed my name back to Chen the summer after freshman year, the first chance I got to reclaim my father's name, the name Richard always said with a little curl of his lip. I've been Maya Chen professionally for 15 years. My LinkedIn says I'm based in the metro, but doesn't list the company publicly for privacy reasons. My own mother barely knows what I do. We speak maybe twice a year, stilted calls where she asks if I'm eating enough, and I ask about her garden, and neither of us mentions him. He has no idea that the VP reviewing his application, the woman who will sit across from him in conference room B at 2 p.m., is the stepdaughter he told, on more occasions than I can count, that she'd * never amount to anything. The girl he said wasn't smart enough, wasn't focused enough, didn't have what it takes. I can hear his voice like he's standing in the room. You're living in a fantasy world, Maya. You think you're special, but you're not. You're going to end up working retail or married to some loser who'll support you because God knows you don't have the backbone to make it on your own. I was 17. I just got my acceptance letter to UC Berkeley. My phone buzzes. A text from Diane, my mentor, and the CFO 2 floors up. Lunch Thursday. Want to prep you for the board strategy session. I type back perfect. Thanks, D. Diane's the one who promoted me to VP at 33, who told me I had executive presence before I believed it myself, who said, stop apologizing for being good at your job. I look at Richard's resume again. At the gap years, the stagnant roles, the slow slide into obsolescence. And I look around my office, the awards on the shelf, the view of the skyline, the agenda for this afternoon's meeting with the C-suite. I could recuse myself. I could hand this off to Liam, my director of talent, and never think about it again. But why should I? Richard Kovacs is a stranger applying for a job. The fact that he once lived in my house, once made me feel like I was taking up space I hadn't earned, once stood in the kitchen and told my mother I'd never make anything of myself while I was right there washing dishes. That's history. Old pain. It doesn't change the fact that right now, in this moment, he's just another candidate. And I'm just doing my job. I reopen the blinds, smooth my jacket, and check my reflection in the dark glass of my monitor. Slate gray suit, silk blouse, hair pulled back in a low twist. I look like what I am, a woman who runs things. Trevor, I say into the intercom, let HR know I'm ready. Have them bring Mr. Kovacs up. You got it. I pull out the interview rubric we use for all project manager candidates. Standardized questions, competency matrix, scoring criteria. I will do this exactly by the book. I will be fair. I will be professional. And when he walks into this office and sees my name on the door, when he realizes who's sitting across the table holding his career in her hands, I won't gloat. I won't smile. I won't say a single word about the past. I'll just be exactly what he said I could never be. That'll be enough. But first, you need to understand how we got here. You need to know what it costs to build this office, this life, this version of myself that Richard Kovacs won't recognize. Because none of it was inevitable. And all of it started with a little girl who believed, who couldn't help but believe the way children do, that if she was just better maybe he'd love her. I was 8 when my mom married Richard. My real dad, my dad, Daniel Chen, died when I was 6. Aneurysm, no warning. He was reading me The Secret Garden on a Sunday afternoon, and then he was gone. I don't remember much about the funeral, but I remember his voice, the way he called me his little architect because I liked to build things out of blocks and cardboard, elaborate towers and bridges that he'd always crouch down to admire. Look at that, Maya. You've got an engineer's brain. Mom was wrecked. We both were. For a year, it was just the two of us in a too-quiet apartment, eating cereal for dinner, falling asleep on the couch. I think she was lonely in a way I couldn't fix, no matter how good I was. Richard appeared at her dental office where she worked the front desk. He was charming, I guess, attentive in that early way that feels like sunlight when you've been cold for too long. Flowers, dinner dates. He'd bring me little gifts, coloring books and hair ribbons, and ruffle my hair like I was a puppy. They got married 10 months after they met, in a tiny ceremony at the courthouse. I wore a white dress and held a single daisy. Richard's kids from his first marriage, 2 boys, already teenagers, didn't come. I didn't think much of it at the time. We moved into his house, a cramped 3-bedroom ranch on the east side with brown carpet and a yard that was mostly dirt. Mom said it was a fresh start. For about 6 months, it was okay. Richard worked in logistics for a manufacturing company. He'd come home tired, eat dinner in silence, fall asleep in front of the TV. He wasn't warm, but he wasn't cruel. I thought maybe that was just what stepfathers were like. I tried to stay out of his way. But then the comparisons started. His older son, Josh, was in college on a baseball scholarship. His younger son, Kyle, was some kind of math prodigy. I'd never met them, but I knew their names the way you know the names of saints in a religion that isn't yours, invoked constantly, held up as proof of something I'd never be. Josh earned that scholarship. Nobody handed him anything. Kyle's taking AP Calculus as a sophomore. That's discipline. I was 9, maybe 10. I'd brought home a report card, 5 A's and 1 B+ in PE because I couldn't climb the rope. I was proud. Mom smiled, put it on the fridge. Richard looked at it and said, a B+ in gym. Really? That was the first time, not the last. It got worse in middle school. I was shy, bookish, not great at sports. I liked art and writing, spent hours drawing cities I'd live in someday, imagining buildings I'd design. Richard saw it as waste. Why are you drawing? You have a math test tomorrow. You're going to make a career out of doodling. Grow up. You don't have the discipline for architecture. That's engineering. You're not an engineer. When I said I wanted to try, he'd laugh, not a warm laugh, the kind that makes you small. You'll never amount to anything if you keep your head in the clouds. My mother would glance up from whatever she was doing, dishes, laundry, bills, and say nothing. Sometimes she'd put a hand on my shoulder later, in private, and whisper, he doesn't mean it like that. He just wants you to be realistic. But he did mean it, and realistic was just another word for less. High school was when I learned that achievement wouldn't save me, that nothing I did would ever be enough because the problem wasn't my performance, it was my existence. Freshman year, I made honor roll. Richard's response, honor roll isn't Dean's List. You know Kyle made Dean's List every semester, right? Sophomore year, I joined the robotics club, thought maybe if I did something technical, something he'd respect. He told me I was wasting time I should spend on my GPA. When I made first team at the regional competition, he didn't come to the ceremony. Said he had to work. I saw his car at the sports bar on my way home. Junior year, I started researching colleges. Real ones, Berkeley, MIT, Carnegie Mellon. I had the grades by then. 4.2 weighted GPA, AP courses, extracurriculars. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Herrera, told me I had a shot at scholarships if I kept it up. She was the first adult who ever looked at my transcript and said, Maya, you could do anything. I went home flying. I made the mistake of believing Richard might be proud. I told him at dinner. Mom had made meatloaf. The kitchen smelled like onions and ketchup, and I was so nervous I could barely eat. I slid the college brochures across the table, glossy photos of campuses and labs and libraries that looked like cathedrals. Mrs. Herrera thinks I should apply early decision to Berkeley, I said, for their engineering program, and she said there are scholarships I could. Richard didn't even look up from his plate. Berkeley, he said it like I'd suggested Harvard, like I'd said the moon. You're not getting into Berkeley. My GPA is. Your GPA doesn't mean anything, Maya. Those schools get thousands of kids with perfect grades. You think you're special. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were so cold. You're setting yourself up for disappointment. You should be looking at community college, maybe a state school if you're lucky. My mother's fork paused. She glanced at me, then at him. Richard, she's doing really well, maybe. Linda, don't. His voice was sharp. Don't encourage this fantasy. She needs to be realistic. He turned back to me. You want my advice? Get a practical degree. Business, maybe. Accounting. Something that'll get you a job. This pipe dream about engineering, architecture, whatever you're into this week, you don't have what it takes. You'll flunk out in a year and waste everyone's time and money. It's not a pipe dream, I said. My voice was shaking. I'm good at this, Mrs. Herrera said. Mrs. Herrera gets paid to be nice to you. He shoved his plate away, done with the conversation. You'll never amount to anything if you keep aiming for things that are out of your league. Learn your limits. I went to my room and cried so hard I threw up. But here's the thing about being told you're not good enough, over and over, for years. Eventually you either break or you calcify. You become small and silent, or you become something harder. I got a job that summer. Starbucks, early morning shifts before school, weekend doubles. I told my mom I wanted spending money. What I really wanted was an escape fund. Richard decided I should pay rent. Not a lot, $200 a month, he said, to teach me responsibility. Never mind that I was 16 and saving for college. Never mind that his own sons never had to do this. I paid it because fighting meant lectures about how I lived under his roof, ate his food, how he'd taken on a daughter who wasn't his, and this was the thanks he got. I opened a bank account he didn't know about. Every paycheck, I deposited half before I came home. I kept the receipt in my backpack, then later in a folder hidden under my mattress, along with my report cards, my acceptance letters to summer programs, printed emails from Mrs. Herrera. Even then, I was documenting, building a case for a future I couldn't yet see. I stopped talking at dinner, stopped sharing anything. When I won an award, I didn't tell him. When I got promoted to shift lead at work, making an extra $1 an hour, I said nothing. I learned to be invisible in my own house, to move through the rooms like a ghost. My mother noticed. "You're so quiet lately," she'd say, worried in that passive way of hers, like she was observing whether she couldn't control. I wanted to scream, "You let him do this. You stand there and let him tell me I'm nothing." But I didn't, because she'd chosen him. Every silence was a choice. Senior year, applications were due. Berkeley's application fee was $70. I had it saved, but when I asked Richard to send my transcripts, something the school required a parent's signature for, he refused. "I'm not paying to send your transcripts to a school you won't get into." "I'll pay the fee," I said. "I have the money, I just need you to sign." "No." "Why not?" "Because," he said, not even looking up from his laptop, "you're going to apply to East Valley State and maybe one other safety school. I'm not enabling this delusion." I was so angry, I thought my skin would split open. I went to Mrs. Herrera in tears. She made phone calls. She got the transcript sent, got the fee waived, wrote me a recommendation letter that I didn't read until years later when I requested my admissions file. Maya is one of the most resilient young people I have ever taught. She has succeeded not because of her circumstances, but in spite of them. I applied to 6 schools. I got into 4. Berkeley accepted me in March with a partial scholarship, half tuition, renewable if I maintained a 3.5 GPA. I'd need loans for the rest, plus work study, plus whatever I'd saved. It would be tight. It would be terrifying. I didn't care. The letter came on a Tuesday. Thick envelope, gold embossed seal. I opened it in my car, parked outside the house, and I sobbed so hard I fogged the windows. That night, I told them. Mom cried, happy tears, and hugged me so tight I could feel her shaking. For a moment I thought maybe this would be the thing that woke her up, made her see me. Richard put down his phone and stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "You got in," flat, no inflection. "Yeah," I was breathless, hopeful, stupidly hopeful. "Yeah, I did, with scholarship and I've been saving and financial aid should cover." "You'll flunk out." The air went out of the room. "Richard," my mother said, tentative, still holding my hand, "maybe we should." "She'll flunk out," he said again, louder. "You think you're going to survive at a school like that? You're not cut out for that world, Maya. Those kids have tutors, prep courses, parents with money. You're going to get there and realize you don't belong, and then what? You'll come crawling back here in debt with nothing to show for it." "I won't," I whispered. "You will." He stood up, and suddenly he was towering, taking up all the space. "You're making a mistake, and I'm not going to watch you throw your life away and then expect me to pick up the pieces. You want to go? Fine, but don't expect help from me. Not money, not a place to come back to when it falls apart. You're on your own." My mother's hand slipped out of mine. "Richard, she's 18, we can't just." "She's an adult," he said, "and adults live with their choices." I looked at my mom, waited for her to fight, to stand up, to say she's my daughter. She looked at the floor. Something in me that had been bending for years finally snapped. "Fine," I said. I went to my room, pulled out the duffel bag I'd already packed, because part of me had always known, and I started loading it with everything I couldn't replace. Photos of my dad, my journals, documents, the money from the secret account I'd already moved to a cashier's check. Richard didn't follow me. My mother stood in the doorway, wringing her hands. "Maya, please, just wait. Let's talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about." I zipped the bag. My hands weren't shaking anymore. "I'm going to Berkeley, I'm going to study engineering, and I'm going to be fine." "He's just worried." "He's not worried, Mom. He's cruel." I looked at her, really looked, and saw someone I didn't recognize anymore. Someone who'd traded her daughter for peace. "And you let him be." "That's not fair." "You're right," I said. "It's not." I walked out the front door with one duffel bag, $3,400 in savings, and a future that was entirely, terrifyingly mine. I slept on Mrs. Herrera's couch for a week, then with a friend's family until graduation. I worked doubles all summer, lived in a rented room the size of a closet, saved every penny. In August, I drove to Berkeley in a car I'd bought for $1,200 that rattled every time I went over 40. I'd changed my name back to Chen at the county clerk's office in June, $45, and a notary signature. When I filled out my housing forms, I wrote Maya Chen asterisk like I was signing a contract with myself. I didn't call home. My mother called me once in September. I let it go to voicemail. She said Richard was sorry, that he didn't mean it, that I should come home for Thanksgiving. I deleted it. I didn't go home for Thanksgiving, or Christmas, or spring break. I went to class. I studied. I worked in the library, shelving books for $12 an hour. I tutored underclassmen in calculus and CAD. I ate ramen and dollar menu burritos and learned to make a meal out of the free coffee and bagels at department events. And I was good. Not perfect. I got a C+ in thermodynamics my first semester and cried in a bathroom stall because I thought I'd lose my scholarship. But I pulled it up. I asked for help. I went at office hours, joined study groups, learned that asking questions wasn't weakness. I met professors who saw something in me. Dr. Patel, who taught systems design, told me I had an intuitive grasp of process optimization and suggested I consider operations research. I didn't even know that was a field. I took an internship sophomore year with a mid-sized tech firm doing supply chain analysis. It was supposed to be grunt work, data entry, spreadsheets, but I found patterns no one else had noticed, inefficiencies costing them tens of thousands a quarter. I wrote it up in a memo. My supervisor presented it to the director. They implemented my recommendations. They offered me a job when I graduated. By senior year, I had 3 offers. I chose the one with the best mentor program, a consulting firm specializing in operational turnarounds. The pay was $62K, which felt like a lottery win, and the VP who interviewed me was a woman named Diane Wu who looked me in the eye and said, "You're going to be running teams in 5 years." I wanted to believe her. Graduation day, I walked across the stage in a borrowed gown. Mrs. Herrera flew up from San Diego, paid for the flight herself, and cried in the audience. My mother sent a card with a $50 check that I never cashed. Richard sent nothing. I told myself I didn't care. Mostly I didn't. The first year at the firm was brutal. 100-hour weeks, clients who hated you for pointing out their failures, travel to dying factories and bankrupt warehouses. I learned to read a P and L in my sleep, to spot bloat and waste, to manage people twice my age who resented taking orders from a 22-year-old. But I loved it. The problems were puzzles, and I was good at solving them. Diane became my mentor officially, took me to client meetings, taught me how to speak in boardrooms, how to negotiate, how to handle men who interrupted or dismissed me. "Don't get mad," she'd say. "Get specific. Bury them in data they can't argue with." At 25, I was promoted to senior consultant. At 28, associate director. At 30, I was managing a team of 12. I bought a condo. Small, but mine. No roommates, no landlord. I had furniture that wasn't second-hand and a coffee maker that cost more than my weekly grocery budget in college. I started therapy, finally, because the nightmares hadn't stopped, and I was tired of spending every success waiting for someone to tell me I didn't deserve it. Therapy helped, slowly. I unpacked the voice in my head that sounded like Richard, the one that said I was a fraud, that I'd be found out, that I wasn't enough. My therapist, Dr. Brennan, gave me a mantra: "You are not the story someone else told about you." I said it every morning for a year, until I started to believe it. At 31, Diane recruited me to a new firm, a competitor that was expanding, that needed someone to build an operations division from scratch. The title was Director of Strategy. The salary had 6 figures. I said yes. I hired my own team. I set the culture. I implemented systems that worked, fired clients that didn't, built a reputation for being tough but fair. We took companies that were hemorrhaging money and made them functional. I was good at it, better than good. At 33, the CEO retired. The board promoted Diane to CFO and restructured the executive team. Diane called me into her office on a Friday and said, "How do you feel about Vice President of Operations?" I cried in my car for 20 minutes. The day they put my nameplate on the door, I took a photo and sent it to Mrs. Herrera. She replied with a string of emojis, and I always knew. I didn't send it to my mother. By then, we spoke maybe twice a year, stilted, surface-level calls where she asked if I was eating and I asked about her roses. She never mentioned Richard unless I asked, and I stopped asking. I didn't know if they were happy. I didn't want to know. I built a life, a good one. Friends, a team that respected me, a salary that meant I never had to check my account balance before buying groceries. I dated, though nothing stuck. I was guarded in ways I couldn't quite shake, afraid to let someone close enough to see the parts of me that still felt like that girl at the dinner table, holding out a report card that would never be good enough. But I was successful. By any metric that mattered, title, income, impact, I had made it. And Richard had no idea. I hadn't thought about him in months, maybe longer. He was a scar, old and faded, something I only noticed when the weather changed. Until today. Until HR sent me his folder, and the scar split open, and I realized that the man who told me I'd never amount to anything was about to walk into my office and ask me for a job. I closed the folder and opened it again, like the words might have changed. They haven't. Richard Kovacs, 57, currently unemployed. Previous role, Regional Manager, Summit Logistics Solutions. Reason for leaving, position eliminated due to organizational restructuring. That's corporate speak for laid off. I click through to the background check we run on all final candidates. Nothing disqualifying, just the bland record of a man who spent 30 years in middle management without ever quite breaking through. No criminal history. Credit score in the 600s, which tells me he's been struggling. 2 addresses in the last 3 years. He's desperate. That's why he's applying for a role beneath his experience level. That's why his cover letter, I open it now, skim the generic paragraphs about leveraging synergies and proven track record, reads like something generated by an AI that learned corporate speak from LinkedIn posts. I should feel triumphant. I should feel vindicated. What I feel is hollow. I pick up my phone and scroll to Diane's contact, then stop. It's 1:47. She's in back-to-back meetings until 3. I could call Dr. Brennan, but my next therapy appointment isn't until Thursday, and showing up in crisis over my stepfather feels like regression. Instead, I text my friend Kara, another VP 2 buildings over. We met at a Women in Leadership conference 4 years ago and bonded over whiskey sours and war stories about being the only woman in the room. Weird situation. Got a minute to talk. 3 dots appear immediately. Then, always call me. I close my office door fully, something I rarely do, and dial. What's wrong? Kara doesn't bother with hello. Did Marcus fuck up the Singapore deal? No, nothing like that. I sink into my chair. I need a gut check, ethics question. I'm listening. I have a 2 p.m. interview, standard PM role. The candidate is... I pause because saying it out loud makes it real. It's my stepfather. He doesn't know I work here. Different last name. He has no idea who I am now. Silence, then, holy shit. Yeah. The stepfather, the one who... Told me I'd never amount to anything. Yes, that one. I laugh, and it sounds bitter even to me. He's applying for a job that would put him 3 levels below me on the org chart. Maya, Kara's voice is careful. What do you want to do? I don't know, that's why I'm calling you. I rub my temples. I could recuse myself, hand it to Liam, pretend I never saw the file. You could. Or I could take the meeting, treat him like any other candidate, run the interview, score the rubric, make my recommendation based on merit. Which would be? I look at his resume again. Honestly, he's not a strong fit. His experience is dated. He's been in traditional manufacturing and freight, and we need someone who understands tech-enabled supply chain. His last 2 roles ended badly. He's overqualified on paper but underskilled for what we actually need. So he wouldn't get the job anyway. Probably not. Then what's the dilemma? I close my eyes. I don't know if I can sit across from him and be objective, and I don't know if doing this, interviewing him, being the one who decides his fate, makes me just as cruel as he was. Maya, Kara's voice sharpens. Listen to me. If some random 57-year-old dude applied for this job with this resume, would you interview him? Yes, we interview all final candidates for this role. And would you hire him? Based on what I'm seeing, no. Then there's your answer. She pauses. You're not being cruel. You're doing your job. He's not owed special treatment because he married your mom 25 years ago. If anything, you're giving him more consideration by even questioning whether to recuse yourself. But, no buts. Would you recuse yourself if it was an old teacher, a neighbor, your college roommate's dad? No. Exactly. He's a stranger, Maya. You haven't spoken to him in over a decade. He's applying for a job at your company. You review candidates. That's literally in your job description. Kara's tone softens. What are you really afraid of? I stare out the window at the skyline, the buildings catching late afternoon light. That I'll enjoy it too much, I finally say. That I'll want him to suffer, that I'm not as far past this as I thought I was. Of course you're not past it. Trauma doesn't have a statute of limitations. I hear her take a breath. But here's the thing, you're not going to make him suffer. You're going to sit in that conference room, ask him competency-based questions, and evaluate whether he can do the job. If he can't, and it sounds like he can't, then he doesn't get the job. That's not revenge. That's standards. And if he recognizes me, then he recognizes you, and he sees exactly what you built, what he said you'd never have. Her voice is firm now, almost fierce. Maya, you have spent 15 years becoming someone incredible. You don't owe him invisibility. You don't owe him a heads up or a soft landing or a recusal. You owe yourself the right to exist in your own success without shrinking. My throat tightens. When did you get so wise? I had a really good therapist and a really shitty ex-husband. Teaches you things. She laughs. Do the interview, be professional. And then call me after and tell me how it went, because I need to live vicariously through this. You're terrible. I'm really not. I'm just on your side. We hang up. I sit for another moment, letting her words settle. She's right. I know she's right. Richard Kovacs is applying for a job. I'm the VP who approves hires. This is business. The fact that he once made me feel worthless doesn't change the job description. It doesn't change his qualifications or lack thereof. It doesn't change the rubric. I pull up the interview template one more time. 8 questions, scored on a 5-point scale across 4 competencies. Leadership, problem-solving, communication, cultural fit. I add a note to the file. Candidate has relevant experience but may lack technical fluency in current systems. Probe for adaptability and learning agility. Professional, fair, documented. If he doesn't get the job, it won't be because of me. It'll be because he isn't good enough. The irony is so sharp I almost laugh. I check the time, 1:56. Trevor, I say into the intercom, send them up. That night I don't go to the gym. I don't call friends. I go home to my apartment, 13th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of place I used to walk past and assume was for other people, and I pour a glass of wine I don't drink. I stand on my balcony and watch the city lights blink on as the sky fades to indigo. The meeting is tomorrow at 2 p.m. I confirmed it before I left the office. HR will bring him to conference room B, the small one with the glass walls and the view of the atrium. Neutral territory. I'll have the rubric, a pad of paper, a bottle of water. Professional distance. I've done 100 of these. This one shouldn't be different. Except my hands are shaking, and I can't stop running through scenarios. What if he recognizes me immediately? What if he doesn't recognize me at all? What if he tries to hug me, or apologize, or pretend the past didn't happen? What if he's good in the interview? What if he's terrible and I have to watch him flail? I set the wine down, untouched, and go inside. My journal is on the nightstand, leather-bound, a gift I bought myself last year. I've kept journals since middle school, a habit born from having no one to talk to. I open to a blank page and stare at it. Then I start writing. Tomorrow I'm going to see Richard for the first time in 16 years. He's interviewing for a job at my company. He doesn't know I work here. He doesn't know who I became. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. Angry, vindicated, sad. Mostly I feel tired. I keep thinking about the last thing he said to me. You'll come crawling back. Like failure was inevitable. Like I was too weak, too stupid, too unrealistic to survive without him. I didn't crawl back. I didn't even look back. And now, he's the one who needs something from me. I pause, pen hovering. Part of me wants him to suffer. I want him to sit in that chair and realize who I am and feel every ounce of shame and regret he never felt when I was a kid. I want him to know he was wrong. But another part of me, the part that sounds like Dr. Brennan, like Diane, like the version of myself I've fought to become, knows that's not the point. The point is that I don't need him to admit he was wrong. I don't need his apology or his validation or his belated pride. I already won. I won the day I walked out his door. I won every semester I stayed on the dean's list. I won every promotion, every team I built, every problem I solved. He doesn't get to take credit for that, and he doesn't get to take it away. I close the journal and sit with the silence. Then I open my laptop. The interview rubric is saved in my files. I open it, read through the questions again, make sure I know them cold. I won't fumble. I won't get emotional. I'll be exactly what I've trained myself to be. Calm, competent, fair. I pull up his resume one more time and make notes in the margins. Ask about gap from 2019-2020. Ask about reasons for leaving Summit Logistics. Ask how he stays current with industry trends. His LinkedIn hasn't been updated in 2 years. These aren't gotcha questions. They're the same things I'd ask anyone. But they'll reveal whether he's done the work, whether he's adaptable, whether he's someone I'd trust with a multi-million-dollar project and a team of 15. I already know the answer. But I'll let him show me anyway. By the time I close the laptop, it's past 11. I should sleep. Instead, I pull out an older journal, one from college, and flip to a page I bookmarked years ago. It's dated June 2007, right after graduation. I walked today. Cap and gown, the whole thing. Mrs. H was there. She brought flowers. Mom sent a card. Richard sent nothing. I thought I'd be sadder, but mostly I just feel free. He was wrong about me, and I'm never giving him the chance to tell me otherwise again. I read it twice, then put the journal away. That girl, 22, scared, hopeful, she'd be proud of who I am now. Tomorrow, I'll show Richard who she became. I wake up at 5:30 a.m., an hour before my alarm. No point fighting it. I go for a run, 4 miles along the waterfront, cold air burning my lungs, the rhythm of my feet on pavement the only thing that feels real. By the time I'm back, showered, and staring into my closet, the sun is up and my heart rate has almost returned to normal. I choose my armor carefully. The slate gray suit, tailored within an inch of its life. I bought it last year for the board presentation where I pitched the operational restructure that saved the company $4.2 million annually. Diane told me I looked like I could run a country. Silk blouse underneath, charcoal. Small pearl earrings, my father's gift to my mother, passed to me after he died. I wear them on days I need to remember who I was before Richard. Heels that make me 510. Hair pulled into a low chignon, sleek and unshakable. I look at myself in the mirror. I look like a vice president. I look like someone who makes decisions that matter. I look like exactly what he said I'd never be. Good. I get to the office by 7:15. The floor is quiet. Most of the team doesn't arrive until 8:30, but I like these early hours. Time to think without interruption. I make coffee in the small kitchen on our floor, the good kind I keep in my desk, not the sludge from the communal pot. I take it back to my office, close the door, and go through emails. At 9, my calendar pings, leadership team sync. I take it in the main conference room, half listening to updates on Q1 projections and the Seattle office build-out. Diane catches my eye at one point and mouths, "Asterisk, you okay?" I nod. At 10:30, I have a one-on-one with Jen, my best PM, who's dealing with a client who keeps moving deadlines. I give her the same advice Diane once gave me: document everything. Then when they blame you, you have receipts. At noon, I try to eat the salad I brought from home. I manage 4 bites. At 1:30, I get a Slack from HR. Candidate checked in early. We have him in the lobby, still good for 2. I type back, "Yes, conference room B." "All set, see you at 2. I stand, smooth my jacket, and walk to the bathroom. The face in the mirror is calm, controlled. No one would know my pulse is racing. I reapply lipstick, red, the power shade Diane swears by, and meet my own eyes. "You are not the story someone else told about you." I say it out loud, just once, and my voice doesn't shake. At 1:55, I gather the folder, the rubric, a notepad, and a pen. I walk down the hall to conference room B. The glass walls show it's empty. HR will bring him up at exactly 2. They're nothing if not punctual. I sit in the chair facing the door. Position of power. I set the folder down, align it with the edge of the table, and fold my hands. The atrium below is bustling. People coming back from lunch, crossing between buildings, living their ordinary Mondays. My phone buzzes. A text from Kara, "You've got this. Call me after." Another from Diane, "Remember, you belong in that room. He's lucky you're giving him your time." I don't respond to either. I just breathe. At 1:58, I see movement in the hallway. Claire from HR, walking with a man in an ill-fitting navy suit. "Richard." He looks older than his photo. The fluorescent lights aren't kind. They show every line, every sag, the too-wide tie that's 5 years out of style. He's carrying a leather portfolio that's cracked at the corners, and he's talking to Claire, nodding too much, like he's trying to seem agreeable. They stop outside the door. Claire looks through the glass, sees me, and smiles. She opens the door. "Ms. Chen, thanks for making time. This is Richard Kovacs." I stand. I extend my hand. And I watch his face as he realizes who I am. It takes him 3 full seconds. I watch it happen in real time. The polite smile he's prepared for a stranger, the hand already rising to meet mine, the corporate interview mask he's wearing. Then his eyes actually focus on my face, not just glancing, but seeing asterisk, and the mask cracks. His hand freezes midway. His mouth opens slightly. The color drains from his face in a way that would be comical if my heart weren't pounding so hard I can feel it in my teeth. "Maya," his voice comes out strangled. "Mr. Kovacs." I keep my hand extended, steady, professional. "Please have a seat." Claire from HR glances between us, picking up on the tension but not understanding it. "Do you two know each other?" "We've met," I say smoothly, still holding his gaze. "A long time ago. It won't affect the interview process." I can see Richard trying to recalibrate, his brain working visibly behind his eyes. He's doing the math. The girl who left his house with a duffel bag and a head full of unrealistic dreams versus the woman in the corner office with her name on the door. The equation isn't adding up the way he expected. He takes my hand finally. His palm is damp. Maya, he says again, like he's testing the word. I didn't know you worked here. Different last name, I say. I release his hand and gesture to the chair across from me. Shall we get started? I know you took time out of your day for this. Claire settles into the seat beside me, pulling out her laptop to take notes. Standard protocol. She has no idea she's witnessing anything other than a routine interview. Richard sits. He's off balance, fumbling with his portfolio, pulling out a printed resume even though we obviously already have it. His hands are shaking slightly. Good. I open the folder in front of me with deliberate calm, uncap my pen, and look up with the expression I've perfected over 100 interviews. Pleasant, neutral, professionally curious. So, Richard, may I call you Richard? I don't wait for him to answer. I've reviewed your application. Why don't we start with you telling me what interests you about this role? He clears his throat. Once, twice. Yes, well, I have over 20 years of experience in operations and logistics, and I believe I could bring a lot of value to. He stops, looking at me like he's waiting for me to interrupt, to acknowledge the strangeness of this, to react. I just write a note on my pad, generic response, no specific reference to role or company. Can you be more specific? I ask. What about this particular position appeals to you? He glances at Claire, then back at me. Maya, I think we should. Can we talk privately for a... This is a professional interview, Mr. Kovacs. My voice is polite but firm. Claire is here to ensure process integrity. If you're uncomfortable continuing, we can certainly reschedule, but I do have a hard stop at 3. The power in that sentence, the fact that I have the hard stop, that I'm the one with the full calendar, that his asterisk time is the flexible variable, lands like a slap. I can see it in the way he sits back, deflated. No, I can continue. Good, so what about this position interests you? He stumbles through an answer about synergistic opportunities and leveraging core competencies. It's the same buzzword soup from his cover letter. I let him talk for 90 seconds, then move on. Walk me through your last role at Summit Logistics. What were your primary responsibilities? He relaxes slightly. This is safer territory. He talks about managing a team of 8, overseeing regional distribution, coordinating with vendors. It's competent enough, but when I drill down, asking about specific metrics, about how he measured success, about challenges he faced, the answers get vague. We improved efficiency, he says. By what percentage? I'd have to check the exact numbers, but it was significant. I write, unable to quantify results. Tell me about a time you implemented a new system or process. What was the problem you were solving, and what was the outcome? He talks about switching to a new inventory software. But when I ask which system, how he managed the transition, what the ROI was, he flounders. It becomes clear he didn't lead the implementation. He just endured it. I ask about his gap in employment. He says the company downsized. I ask what he's been doing to stay current in the field. He mentions reading industry publications, but can't name one. Are you familiar with predictive analytics in supply chain management? I ask. I've heard of it. Have you worked with any AI-enabled logistics platforms, integrated IoT tracking, blockchain for supply verification? Not directly, but I'm a quick learner. I write, technology skills significantly behind current industry standard. 20 minutes in, I can see sweat forming at his hairline. He keeps trying to make eye contact, to find some human connection, some acknowledgement of our history. I give him nothing but professional courtesy. Claire asks a few questions from her list, culture fit, working style. His answers are fine, unremarkable. Then I ask the question I've been saving. Richard, this role requires managing a team of 15, many of whom are early career professionals. Can you tell me about your approach to mentorship? How do you help people reach their potential, especially when they're just starting out? The silence stretches for 3 full seconds. He knows it's a trap, or maybe not a trap, maybe just a mirror. I believe in high standards, he finally says. I think young people today need to understand that success requires discipline and realistic expectations. I've seen too many people aim for things they're not ready for and then fail. I keep my face perfectly neutral. Can you give me an example? Well, in my experience, the people who succeed are the ones who are willing to start small, to learn their limits, to take advice from people with more experience. He's gaining confidence now, settling into a speech I suspect he's given before. I think there's a tendency today to overcorrect, to tell everyone they can do anything. But that's not realistic. Not everyone is cut out for leadership. Some people are better suited for support roles, and there's no shame in that. Claire is typing. She doesn't know she's documenting a man's entire philosophy of crushing ambition. I make a note. Leadership style incompatible with company culture of growth and development. Interesting, I say. Our approach here is a bit different. We tend to believe that potential isn't fixed, that people can grow beyond initial expectations if given the right support and opportunities. Does that align with your experience? He shifts in his seat. Of course, I believe in growth. I just think it needs to be guided, tempered with realism. I see. I glance at my watch. Just a few more questions. Tell me about a time you were wrong about someone, when you underestimated them and they proved you wrong. His face goes red, actually red. I don't know that I have a specific example. Really? In 23 years of management, you've never misjudged someone's capabilities. I'm generally a good judge of character. I let the silence sit, let him hear what he just said. Claire shifts uncomfortably. Finally, I close my folder. I think that covers what I needed to know. Do you have any questions for us? He looks at me, really looks at me, and for the first time, I see something other than confusion in his eyes. Maybe recognition, maybe regret, maybe just the dawning realization that he's not getting this job. How long have you been with the company? He asks quietly. 4 years in this role, 7 years total. And before that? Is this relevant to your candidacy, Mr. Kovacs? He flinches at the formality. I'm trying to understand how you got here. The same way anyone does, I say. Work, competence, people who believed in my potential. I stand, signaling the interview is over. Claire will walk you out. We'll be in touch within the week. He stands too, slowly, like his joints hurt. He looks smaller than I remember, older, diminished. Maya, he says, and his voice cracks slightly. It's good to see you. You've done well. I could say so many things. I could tell him exactly what it cost to get here. I could ask if he remembers telling me I'd never make it, if he remembers the nights I went to bed feeling worthless, if he has any idea how long it took to stop hearing his voice in my head every time I succeeded. Instead, I extend my hand for a professional handshake. Thank you for your time, I say. His hand is limp in mine. Claire walks him to the door, making pleasant small talk about next steps and timelines. He glances back once, but I'm already looking down at my notes, pen in hand, like he's already forgotten. The door closes. I sit down. I count to 10. Then I put my head in my hands and let myself shake. Claire comes back 5 minutes later, after she's deposited Richard in the elevator and seen him out of the building. She knocks softly on the glass door, even though she can see me sitting there. Come in, I say. My voice is steady again. She sits down, closes her laptop, and looks at me with the careful expression of someone trying not to overstep. So, she says, that was your stepfather. Former stepfather, my mother's ex-husband. The lie comes easily. As far as I'm concerned, they're divorced. The fact that they might technically still be married is irrelevant. Did you know he was applying? Not until I saw his file yesterday. Do you want me to get someone else to make the hearing decision? I can loop in Liam, or... No, I lean back in my chair. I can be objective. In fact, I need to be. I tap the folder. What did you think? Claire chooses her words carefully. He seemed nervous, a little out of his depth with some of the technical questions. He's been out of work for 8 months, I say. And his experience is primarily in traditional logistics, freight, warehousing, manual inventory systems. This role requires someone who can work with our tech stack, manage complex data flows, and mentor a team that's already more digitally fluent than he is. So you're saying he's not a fit? I'm saying he's not qualified. I open the rubric and show her my scores. Leadership, 2 out of 5. Problem solving, 2 out of 5. Technical aptitude, 1 out of 5. Cultural fit, 2 out of 5. These aren't personal. These are based on his answers. Claire reviews the notes. His comment about realistic expectations was pretty telling. Right. We just spent 6 months implementing a mentorship program specifically designed to help junior staff step into leadership roles. Someone who thinks people need to know their limits isn't going to support that initiative. I close the folder. I'm recommending we pass. He's not a match for what we need. Okay, Claire nods. I'll let the team know. We have 2 other candidates in the pipeline who are stronger anyway. Good. She stands, then hesitates. For what it's worth, Maya, you handled that with a lot of grace. I almost laugh. I handled it like a professional. That's what grace looks like. After she leaves, I sit in the conference room for another few minutes, looking out at the atrium. People are coming back from afternoon coffee runs, clustered in conversation, moving through their ordinary days. My phone buzzes, a text from Kara, well. I type back, he bombed. Not qualified, didn't get personal, didn't have to. 3 dots then. Please tell me you asked him about mentorship. I did. He said young people need to learn their limits. Oh my God, beautiful, poetic, call me later. Another text, this one from Diane. Heard you had an interesting interview. You okay? I stare at that one for longer. Yeah, I'm okay. He was exactly who I remembered, just smaller. Her response is immediate. They always are. I go back to my office, close the door, and try to work. I answer emails, review a budget proposal, join a 3 p.m. call about the Atlanta rollout. But my mind keeps drifting back to the look on Richard's face when he realized who I was. Not anger, not even embarrassment. Just confusion, like the world had tilted sideways and he couldn't figure out how to stand upright anymore. At 5:30, Claire sends the official email, candidate debrief for Richard Kovacs. Consensus, not advancing. Concerns Ray, technical aptitude, cultural fit, and leadership approach. Moving forward with other candidates. I mark it as read and file it away. That's it, done. The man who told me I'd never amount to anything came to my company, interviewed for a job in my division, and failed on his own lack of merit. I didn't sabotage him. I didn't have to. I just held him to the same standard I'd hold anyone else. And he couldn't meet it. At 6, I pack up my bag and head home. The sun is setting, turning the glass buildings into sheets of gold and fire. I stop at the Thai place on the corner, the one where they know my order, and pick up dinner. When I get home, I pour that glass of wine I didn't drink last night. This time, I actually take a sip. My phone rings. I don't recognize the number, but the area code is familiar. My mother's area code. I let it go to voicemail. 3 minutes later, I listen to the message. Maya, it's Mom. Her voice is tight, anxious. Richard just called me. He said he had an interview today and you were there. He sounded very upset. He said you treated him like a stranger. A pause. Honey, I know there's history, but he's trying. He's been out of work for a while and this was a real opportunity for him. I just think maybe you could help him out. Put in a good word. He's family. I delete the message before it finishes. Then I block the number. 5 minutes later, she calls from a different number. I let it ring. She leaves another message. Maya, please, I know you're angry, but he's struggling. We're struggling. I'm asking you as your mother to help him, just this once. I save the voicemail, documentation, old habits, but I don't respond. Instead, I call her back from my work phone, the one she doesn't have saved. She picks up on the second ring. Hello. Mom, it's Maya. Oh, thank God, honey, I'm not helping him get a job. Silence. He interviewed today for a position at my company. I was on the interview panel. He wasn't qualified. We're not moving forward with his candidacy. That's the end of it. Maya, please, if you could just. No, the word comes out harder than I intend, but I don't soften it. He applied for a job. I evaluated him fairly. He didn't meet our standards. That's not personal, Mom, that's business. He said you asked him about mentorship, about underestimating people. That sounds pretty personal. It's a standard interview question for a role that involves managing junior staff. I'm packing now, the phone pressed to my ear. I asked him how he supports people's growth. He said people need to know their limits. That's a red flag for our culture. You could have given him a chance. I gave him an interview. I gave him the same chance I'd give anyone. He's your stepfather. He was your husband. He was never my father. My voice cracks just slightly, and I hate it. He spent 10 years telling me I wasn't good enough, that I'd never make it, that I should aim lower, try less, except that I wasn't cut out for the things I wanted. And now he shows up, needing something from me, and you think I owe him help. I think you could show some compassion. I showed him professionalism, which is more than he ever showed me. She's crying now. I can hear it in her breathing. I just don't understand why you have to be so cold. He made mistakes, Maya, but he was trying to protect you, to keep you from getting hurt. He wasn't protecting me, Mom. He was projecting, and you let him. That's not fair. You're right, I say. It's not fair. It wasn't fair when I was 16 and he told me I'd flunk out of college. It wasn't fair when I was 12 and he compared me to his sons and found me lacking. It wasn't fair when I left and you asked me to apologize. I never. You asked me to come home for Thanksgiving, to smooth things over, like I was the problem. I sit down on my couch, suddenly exhausted. I love you, Mom, but I'm not doing this. I'm not defending my success to you. I'm not apologizing for having standards. And I'm not giving Richard a job he's not qualified for just because you're married to him. So that's it. You're just going to let him suffer. I'm going to let him face the consequences of his own choices, just like I had to. I hang up before she can respond. For a long time, I just sit there, the phone in my hand, the city lights blinking on outside my windows. I feel hollowed out, sad in a way that's different from anger, deeper, older, grieving for the mother who could have stood up for me and didn't, for the relationship we'll never have because she chose him over me again and again and still doesn't see it. But underneath, the sadness is something else. Relief. I set a boundary. I said no. I didn't cave to guilt or obligation or the lifetime of conditioning that says women should be nice, should smooth things over, should put everyone else's comfort above their own integrity. I did my job, I was fair, and I walked away. That's enough. 3 weeks later, I'm in my office when Jen knocks on the door frame. Hey, do you have a minute? Sure, come in. She sits down, looking nervous in a way that's unusual for her. Jen's normally unflappable, one of the best PMs I've ever worked with, the kind of person who runs toward problems instead of away from them. I wanted to ask you something, she says. It's kind of personal. Okay. You've mentioned before that you didn't have a lot of support early in your career, that you kind of had to figure things out on your own. I nod slowly. That's true. I'm in a situation where my family doesn't really get what I do. They think I should have gone into something more traditional. My dad keeps asking when I'm going to get a real job. She laughs, but it's strained. And I know I'm doing well here. You've told me I'm on track for senior PM, but sometimes I hear his voice in my head and I wonder if he's right, if I'm just deluding myself. My chest tightens. Jen, I say carefully, do you like this work? I love it. Are you good at it? I think so. My metrics are strong, my teams hit deadlines, clients request me specifically. Then you're not deluding yourself. You're succeeding despite someone else's limited vision of what you're capable of. She looks at me with wide eyes, like I've just unlocked something. The people who tell you to aim lower, I continue, are usually the people who never aimed high themselves. They're not protecting you. They're protecting their own worldview. Because if you succeed at something they said was impossible, then they have to confront their own choices. How do you deal with it? The voice, I mean. I think about that. About Richard's voice in my head for so many years, the constant refrain of asterisk, not good enough, never enough, you'll fail. Honestly, therapy helped, but mostly I just kept building evidence to the contrary. Every time I succeeded, I documented it, kept performance reviews, awards, thank you notes from clients, built a folder of proof. I smile. Eventually, the evidence outweighed the voice. Can I ask you something else? Of course. If you saw that person now, your dad or whoever it was who doubted you, what would you say? I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the skyline. I thought I'd have something profound to say, some speech about how wrong they were, how I proved them wrong, how they missed out on knowing who I became. I turned back to her. But when I actually had the chance, I didn't say anything. I just existed. I let my work speak for itself, and that was more powerful than any words would have been. Jen nods slowly. So you just kept going. I kept going, and you will too. After she leaves, I sit with the conversation for a while. Then I open my laptop and start drafting an email to HR. I'd like to formalize a mentorship program for early career PMs with a focus on leadership development and resilience. Can we schedule time next week to discuss structure and budget? Diane always says the best revenge is building something better than what broke you. Maybe this is mine. That evening, I meet Kara for dinner at the wine bar we like, the one with the good cheese plates and the bartender who remembers our orders. So, she says once we're settled with glasses of Pinot, how are you, really? I'm okay, I say, and I mean it. It was weird, it was hard, but I'm okay. Did he reach out after? No, my mom did, asked me to help him get a job. I take a sip of wine. I said no. Good for you. I blocked her number. Kara raises her glass. Even better for you. We toast to that, to boundaries, to hard-won peace. You know what the weirdest part was? I say. I spent so many years imagining what I'd say to him if I ever saw him again. All these speeches about how wrong he was, how I made it in spite of him. But when he was actually sitting there, I didn't want to give a speech. I just wanted to do my job. Because you're not who you were, Kara says. You're not the kid trying to prove herself. You're the woman who already proved it. I guess so. And that, she says, spearing a piece of cheese, is the actual happy ending. Not revenge, not confrontation, just living well enough that the past stops mattering. I think about that. She's right. Richard didn't get the job. My mother is upset. I'll probably never have the relationship with either of them that some part of me still wishes I could. But I have this. My name on a door, a team that respects me, work that matters, friends who show up, a life I built with my own hands. I have proof, not for him but for myself, that I am exactly who I always said I could be. That little girl who left with a duffel bag and a dream. She'd be so proud of who we became. And that's enough. More than enough. A few months later, I'm working late on a Friday when I get an email from the Scholarship Foundation I've been consulting with, a program for first-generation college students in STEM. They want to name the annual award after a donor or advocate. I write back and suggest they name it after Mrs. Herrera, my high school counselor, the woman who saw potential in me when no one else did. They love the idea. At the award ceremony that fall, I give a short speech about mentorship, about the people who believe in us before we believe in ourselves, about the responsibility we have to pay that forward. I talk about being underestimated, about people who told me what I couldn't do. I don't mention Richard by name. I don't have to. The best response to someone who says you'll never amount to anything, I tell the room full of students, is to build a life so full, so accomplished, so undeniably yours asterisk, that their words become irrelevant. Not because you proved them wrong, though you will, but because you proved asterisk yourself asterisk right. The students applaud. A few come up afterward to tell me their own stories, parents who don't understand, teachers who discouraged them, people who said they weren't college material. I listen to each one. I give them my card. I tell them to reach out if they need advice, a reference, someone to tell them they're not crazy for wanting more. Because that's the real victory, I think. Not what I took from Richard, but what I refused to let him take from me. My belief that I deserved more, my willingness to fight for it, my refusal to shrink. That night, I go home to my apartment. The one with the view, the good coffee maker, the bookshelves full of engineering texts and novels and framed photos of people who actually love me, and I pour a glass of wine. I pull out my old journal, the one from high school, and I read what 17-year-old Maya wrote the night she got into Berkeley. Someday I'm going to be someone he can't dismiss. Someday I'll walk into a room and people will listen. Someday his voice will be the smallest sound in my head. I pick up a pen and write on the next page, in the present tense. Someday is now. I am the VP. I am the mentor. I am the woman with her name on the door. He was wrong about me, and I never needed him to admit it. I close the journal and set it on the shelf, spine out, visible, evidence, proof, a record of the distance traveled. Then I text Cara, dinner next week, I'm buying. And Diane, coffee Monday, I have an idea for Q2 I want to run by you. And Jen, how's the Rodriguez project going? Let me know if you need backup. I build my life. I show up for my people. I do work that matters. I don't think about Richard at all. And when I do, when some memory surfaces, some old wound twinges, I look around at what I've built and I remember. He doesn't get to narrate this story. I do. So here's what I want you to know if you're listening to this. If someone ever told you you'd never amount to anything, whether it was a parent, a partner, a teacher, a boss, they were wrong. Not because you're perfect, but because your potential isn't theirs to define. You don't need their apology. You don't need their approval. You don't even need them to see what you became. You just need to keep going. Keep building, keep becoming. Document everything. Trust people who believe in you. Set boundaries without guilt. Let your competence be louder than their doubt. And someday, maybe years from now, maybe tomorrow, you'll realize their voice has gone quiet, and yours is the only one that matters. I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from. Tell me about a time someone underestimated you. Tell me what you're building in spite of the voices that said you couldn't. And if this resonated, if you've ever felt like you had to prove yourself to someone who should have just loved you, hit subscribe. Because you're not alone. None of us are. We're the ones who left, who built, who became. And we're just getting started.